In war, victory. In peace, vigilance. In death, sacrifice. Let's talk Dragon Age, specifically about one of the most prolific factions, probably the most prolific faction throughout the entire series, the Grey Wardens, and what this background means for Rook if you choose to play them as a Grey Warden in Veilguard. When I talk about Rook in this video, I'll be referring to them specifically as a member of the Grey Wardens, so just keep that in mind. There's a much more long-winded explanation in the first video about the Shadow Dragons faction, but essentially I'm going through each faction and what the backgrounds of those mean for role-playing Rook in Veilguard. I'm a role player. I like to get into the heads of my characters and connect with them on that deeper level, so having this background information is going to help me when I create my Rook. I still have not settled on a faction for them, by the way, so I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible in these explorations, but hopefully this information will give you a little bit to build on if you like that immersive aspect of role-playing games. I'm sorry to make you put up with my scratchy voice. My old nemesis, seasonal allergies, has arisen once more, but I also didn't want to put recording this video off because there is a lot to talk about with the Grey Wardens, and it's going to be a long one. Also, I apologize for any clunking sounds in the background. One of my cats has discovered if she gets in the corner of the bathtub and turns around a bunch, she can catch her tail. So at least she's not up here trying to knock over my microphone. I'm gonna call that a win. And your obligatory spoiler warning. If you're trying to avoid all spoilers for anything to do with Dragon Age, this is not the video for you. But if you are new to the series, this video may give you some extra information to inform your role-playing in Veilguard. So use your best judgment. And also welcome to the crazy and wonderful community that is the Dragon Age fandom. Resistance is futile, you are now one of ours. In order to understand what being a Grey Warden means to Rook personally, we need to take a look at this organization from several different perspectives. The first one is on an institutional level. What does this organization look like? What is its structure like? And what are its issues? And what kinds of internal struggles would Rook have been privy to in the organization as a whole? We also need to examine the order from a philosophical standpoint. While the Grey Wardens are allowed to have lives and pursuits outside their status as members of the Order, and while it is bound by the religious tenets of the Chantry, it functions in a way that almost paints them as monastic warriors. The best comparison I can make right now is to the Jedi from Star Wars. The Order of the Grey Wardens was founded in Tevinter 395 years before the beginning of the Chantry calendar. Veilguard takes place in the year 952 Dragon, so that's 1,347 years between the founding of the Grey Wardens and the beginning of our adventure as Rook. For some realistic historical perspective, this would be like 200 years into the Byzantine Empire and around the time of the unification of Korea under the Kingdom of Silla. So the Grey Wardens have been around a long time. The order was founded during the First Blight when a group of Tevinter soldiers decided to break away from the Tevinter Imperium. They didn't see national leadership doing enough to combat this threat, so they broke away and formed their own group specifically to fight the Darkspawn. While the Wardens are scattered across Thedas in national branches, they're led by the First Warden, who's stationed at the fortress of Weishaupt, which will be an important location for us in Veilguard because it's where the climactic battle of the first act takes place. Structurally, the Grey Wardens are organized like a military, but they function like their own nation in many ways, very similarly to how the Inquisition was organized. The Grey Wardens will accept anyone into their ranks, regardless of their race or their prior history, as long as they can fulfill the purpose of the Order. In particular, mages of any race and elves might be especially keen to join the Grey Wardens because having that warden status would remove some of the discrimination and restrictions they normally have to contend with. The Grey Wardens are not supposed to get involved in national politics, and they say they don't. However, we have seen otherwise. The Wardens may say they're neutral, but we have seen them make alliances and decisions of a political nature on both individual and organizational levels. But regardless of politics, their duty to the Order always comes first. Honor and courage are especially important to the Grey Wardens, and they don't undertake the joining ceremony lightly. It involves blood magic, specifically with darkspawn blood, which binds them to the blight. The ritual of joining is a spiritual as well as a physical undertaking. Joining the Grey Wardens requires complete commitment, and if they're not fully committed during the ritual, they die in the attempt. If they're exposed to the joining ritual at all and know what it entails, and they have second thoughts and refuse it, they're killed by the other Grey Wardens in order to preserve the secrets of the ritual. So becoming a member of the Order is incredibly serious. The motto of the Grey Wardens is perhaps one of the strongest I have ever encountered in any work of fiction. In war, victory, fighting the darkspawn, ending each blight as it comes. In peace, vigilance, watching always for signs of the next coming blight and keeping the common people safe. In death, sacrifice. The Wardens taint themselves with darkspawn blood on purpose. It binds them to the blight. It binds them to the darkspawn they are sworn to destroy. All Grey Wardens who have undergone the joining ritual know they will one day hear the call of an archdemon, and like it or not, they will be drawn like the darkspawn to the deep roads. In blighting themselves, they condemn themselves. If they don't die before the corruption consumes their bodies, they become darkspawn themselves. Joining the Grey Wardens means giving up the opportunity for a peaceful death and accepting a very specific and violent end. The Wardens have an arrangement with the dwarves to send Wardens who have begun to hear the calling to help fight back darkspawn in the deep roads. This benefits the dwarves, and it allows the Warden to meet their death valiantly head-on in battle against their sworn enemy, upholding the original purpose of the Order. All Wardens recognize that when they hear the calling, they hear the beginning of their own demise. In Inquisition, Corypheus took control of the Blight and made all Grey Wardens hear the calling at the same time. Just imagine how terrifying that must have been for the entire Order, and they were desperate. They turned to blood magic, summoning demons to build an army so they could march down to the deep roads as one combined force and slay the old gods before they had a chance to be awakened by the Darkspawn. Now, we know this was a ploy by Corypheus to A. get rid of the Grey Wardens, and B. create a demon army under Corypheus's control. And I don't know if BioWare is going to give us the option to choose whether Rook was part of the Grey Wardens 10 years prior to Veilguard and heard the calling with the rest of the Wardens, or if Rook was recruited in the interim. But this event affected all the Grey Wardens at the time. Between this devastating occurrence and a breakdown in philosophies between Grey Wardens, the Order is breaking by the time we encounter them in Veilguard. Their primary purpose is to stop the blights no matter what, and some Wardens take issue with this. They don't believe in sacrificing regular people to fulfill this goal. The joining itself is brutal, and the Grey Wardens have ancient treaties they can leverage to conscript anybody into their ranks if they believe there's a great enough need, knowing any recruit has a good chance of dying in the attempt. From a narrative point of view, it makes sense for Rook to join the Wardens between Inquisition and Veilguard, which means they didn't hear the calling with the rest of the Wardens previously. But if they have interacted with other Wardens who were present, that trauma is still there, of hearing their death singing to them and singing to everyone they stand with. Not to mention the whiplash of finding out it was all a lie. Everyone faces the possibility of death when they take up arms and charge into battle. The Grey Wardens understand this better than most, and they know how they are supposed to die. But they were lied to by this false calling. So what else could be a lie? Besides their willing confrontation of death, there's another point I need to touch on here, and it's that the Wardens believe they are the only ones who can kill archdemons. The premise of this, as it's given to us in Origins, is that two souls cannot exist in the same body. An archdemon can supposedly survive by transferring its soul to the nearest available darkspawn, and because Grey Wardens have darkspawn blood within their systems due to the joining ritual, if an archdemon is killed by a Grey Warden, its soul will supposedly pass to the Grey Warden, who can't sustain both souls, and the archdemon and the warden will be destroyed in the process. Archdemon souls can be transferred, but so can other souls. And while killing an archdemon will halt the progress of the Blight for a time, Solus heavily implies in Inquisition that even with the archdemons dead, the Blight itself will continue. And what is to become of the Grey Wardens when there are no archdemons left to kill and only the Blight itself to battle? The Wardens still believe they can end the Blights permanently by destroying the 2 remaining dragons that could turn into archdemons, and they have the locations of these dragons. And once those are gone, the Grey Wardens are set up to be a political party in Thedas. They remain a formidable military organization, and the already fractured ideologies between the Wardens are going to cause problems on that front sooner or later. The newer and younger generation of Grey Wardens sees the problems of the older Wardens trickling down onto their shoulders, but they're also beginning to see opportunities for change. This is going to be especially relevant to our Grey Warden companion, Davrin. 2 characters we'll get to meet in Veilguard, Evka and Antoine, are relatively new Grey Wardens. They weren't Wardens at the time of the mass calling caused by Corypheus, and they've appeared in several short stories leading up to Veilguard. Evka was a Warden for about 3 years before Antoine joined the Order. In traveling together, they have found themselves up against many dilemmas in trying to protect common people, as well as facing prejudice from the people they're trying to protect. There's a beautiful moment in the story Won't Know when they're between fighting waves of darkspawn, and it's just the 2 of them lying there, exhausted, injured. And the subtext of their conversation is that they don't know when they will die, but they know how they will die. And it's made apparent that up to this point, Evka has not wanted to pursue Antoine romantically because they know the fate to which they are ultimately doomed. But the arc of this short story culminates in Evka finally accepting that they have limited time together and they should enjoy it while it lasts. So on one hand, we have this entire group of Wardens who are coping with the aftermath of thinking they were about to die and then having that rug pulled out from under them. And then we have these younger Wardens who are facing the inevitability of death in a different way. Also, look at just how stinking adorable these 2 are. They're so cute. It's hard to think about the Grey Wardens objectively because they've been such a cornerstone of this game series for so long, but we must recognize that no matter how righteous this organization believes itself to be, the internal politics, the infighting, this questioning of beliefs, are all set up to doom the Grey Wardens to failure, especially when faced with a blight they don't know how to end. We're given the opportunity in Inquisition to ally with or banish the Grey Wardens. If you ally with the Wardens after Adamant Fortress, they try to rebuild themselves, they try to make some changes. There's a whole war table series of quests you can take them on that lead to you gaining influence. They wind up in conflict with the Wardens at Weishaupt, and a call goes out for all Grey Wardens to return there. If you choose to banish the Wardens, guess where they go? In tabletop gaming, there's a concept called railroading, which is when a game runner has a clear idea of the path the players need to follow in order to hit all the story beats and complete their quest. As a player, railroading is incredibly frustrating because a railroading game master will frame the choices players make as wrong if those choices don't match up to what the game master has in mind for the story. No matter what you try to do, there's only one right answer to each situation you encounter. And it might feel like you should probably be reading this as a story instead of playing it as a choice-based game. And I want to be totally clear, if you are playing a tabletop game and whoever is managing this game has set out a clear story structure for the characters to follow for plot reasons and is giving you options that naturally lead towards story beats, that does not count as railroading. A story structure for a game should have clear paths through it, or at least present opportunities for players to create their own paths forward if none are immediately apparent. The stories tabletop games can explore are really limited only by imagination, and video games are much more strictly limited. In a choice-based video game, the developers have to anticipate a few choices a player could make in a given scenario and lay those out for the player to choose from. Those choices then determine the direction the story will take from there, but the story is still on tracks because we don't have the technology yet to make just anything happen in a game. I am unapologetically about to ruin your entire experience of games by giving you a peek behind my screen as a Call of Cthulhu keeper. Let's say I have a party that needs to find a specific tome with information in it that can help them stop a ritual to summon an eldritch being that will devour the earth. I'm just gonna bullshit my way through this one. What's a good name for this book? Uh, Humans are friends, not food. There we go. So this group has to find humans are friends, not food, and I can't directly tell them where to find this book. I know they can find this book in the library just a few blocks away, but I have to let them find that out for themselves. One of them may have the bright idea to go look for the book in their local library, in which case, I'm all set. My story is still on tracks. But let's say they decide to take a train and go several miles east to another city entirely. And maybe they're not even looking for the book at this point, they're trying to help somebody reunite with their lost great-grandnephew. Now they know that he works at the university, and so I'm going to improvise on the fly. I'm going to say, he's a librarian at the university library. He was supposed to be a teacher at the local elementary school, but now he's a librarian. And maybe they wind up at the university library talking to this lost fellow. He's not going to be sitting there at his desk reading this book. Instead, I'm going to make him a little nervous, a little bit jumpy whenever they ask questions about what he does, or maybe they just pick him up and ask him to go to dinner with them, and he'll refuse and he'll say, I've got some reading to do. Or they'll just go check in at a hotel for the night and go back and try again in the morning, and they've forgotten all about this book they need. One of them finds a newspaper slid under the door in the morning, and the front page article is about a brand new collection of rare antique books on display at the local museum. I'm going to keep dropping clues in front of them until they remember they're supposed to be looking for a book. And if all else fails, I'm going to have an NPC come to them with some concern unrelated to the book, but about strange happenings in a certain room of the university, and if they go investigate that, it'll be something to do with a mysterious package that's been sent from some unknown place, and inside the package will be an order form for the book. My job is not to give them one path forward, but to let them make their own choices that all eventually lead back to this book. It's a lot simpler when a game presents you with two choices. Recruit this person to join the Inquisition, or don't, and they won't appear in the game again. The choice we're given with the Grey Wardens in Inquisition to ally with them or banish them both lead back to the same place. In Origins, Duncan gives you the option of joining the Grey Wardens because of the prowess you've demonstrated, or because it will save your life, or another reason that's relevant to your background, also because they really need people. But the game doesn't let us just run off and start a turnip farm somewhere. It puts us on the tracks the story needs. If you refuse him, he still conscripts you anyway. You don't have a real choice at that point. The right of conscription is something the Grey Wardens have as a tool to be able to bolster their ranks in times of need, and no one can refuse this. We're presented with choices, but no matter what we pick, we still end up as the hero of Ferelden who ended the Fifth Blight. No matter whether we choose to ally with the Wardens or banish them in Inquisition, they still end up back at Weishaupt. Veilguard has to put us on similar tracks in order for the story to function. In choosing to play a video game, I am agreeing to stay on the tracks presented to me by the story, and while we get to choose our faction background, there are some things about that background we can't change. There are some things about Rook we can't change, but I really enjoy the challenge of being handed a character who's conceptualized by someone else and kind of filling in the gaps in their history, their personality, and making this character mine because I have a good sense of who they are. Who was Rook before they were a Grey Warden, and what does being a Grey Warden mean to them? Were they a peasant? Were they an orphan? Do they have family? Did they join the Grey Wardens willingly, or were they conscripted because the Wardens' numbers are so diminished after Corypheus? If they survived the joining, we know they believe in the Wardens' cause and they've committed themselves to the Order, but did they do it to fight Darkspawn, or do they feel strongly about protecting people? Are they in it for the fight? Or did they become a Grey Warden to perhaps escape something in their past? Let's look at the background information we have for a Grey Warden Rook so far. During a large Darkspawn incursion, Rook was ordered to hold the line with other Grey Wardens until reinforcements arrived. Rook argued that by then, villagers under attack would be dead. Rook disobeyed orders, leading the squad into the incursion and sealing the tunnel to the deep roads. This turned the tide and the Darkspawn were driven off, which saved the villagers. Like I talked about in the last video with the Shadow Dragon's background, Rook is a bit of a rebel. They don't seem to be afraid of defying authority if it does the job and saves people in the process. They're doing it in the way they believe is right. And it has a good outcome, but Rook's heroism was popular among the younger wardens, but others with connections to noble families resented their independent streak. Rook chose to step away while tempers cooled. Now, we've already talked about what the older wardens have been through over the past decade since Corypheus took control of them. Those wounds are still raw and they're hurting for new recruits. And having a warden defy authority, defy the hierarchy that defines them as an organization, is going to cut deep. But Rook is still one of them. Rook has undergone the joining. Rook is committed to death alongside them. So does our Rook with the Grey Warden background believe in the Order and its goals, or have they begun to question? Within a militaristic structure like that of the Grey Wardens, you don't question orders. You do as you're told, or you could put your superior's plans in jeopardy. So those above you are asking themselves if you're a liability, but you have the support of that generation that did not live through Adamant. As a Grey Warden Rook, we have bound ourselves to the ideals of this order, to protect, to fight with courage and honor, and to save Thedas from the Blight. If our Rook joined the Wardens of their own accord, they probably believe strongly in these ideals. If they were conscripted against their will, their ideals still might match those of the Grey Wardens, but their general views of the organization will be different. I can see a common thread from looking at the Shadow Dragon's background and the others of Rook being willing to defy authority to do what they believe is right for the good of the people around them. But does this fight come from a desire to destroy the Blight, or does it come from a desire to do good for the sake of doing good? We'll have the support of characters like Evka and Antoine who have good hearts and are doing their jobs because of what they believe. On beliefs. The Grey Wardens follow the Chant of Light. They're an Andrastian order. But what if your warden was originally a Dalish elf? Do they still follow their old gods? Or do they now follow the Maker and the teachings of Andraste because that's what the rest of the order is built under? If they're a dwarf, do they still practice ancestor worship of the Paragons? If they're Kunari, how do they feel about the Kun? If they were originally from Tevinter and followed the old gods, how does that fit in or contrast with the Warden's goal of destroying these archdemons who ostensibly are the old gods of ancient Tevinter? Lots of questions here, and we can definitely use that to roleplay when we make our choices as Rook, some of which are going to be big, especially those involving the Grey Wardens, because that's been a running theme through all the games so far. And ultimately, that's what being a Grey Warden comes down to for Rook. What does Rook believe their role in this world is? What are they going to do? What actions are they going to take? What choices are we going to make as Rook to make the world a better place as we watch the Order of the Grey Wardens fall? The automatic surname the game gives us for a rook with the Grey Warden's background is Thorn. I don't have any linguistic or etymological input to offer on this other than maybe they're a thorn in their superior's sides at times. Thorns are a plant's protective mechanism, which I think fits the Warden really well. Also, Warden Thorn is just a cool sounding name. Let's keep talking Dragon Age. I've really enjoyed connecting with people in the comments from the last video. I'm still figuring out how to make YouTube videos, so please critique me. If there's anything I can do better, let me know. It can only help me get better. Just don't judge my book titling skills too harshly, I guess. Humans are friends, not food, coming to bookstores soon near you. Stay sane, folks, and I will see you later. Cheers.